The moment Isabella's hand released the groom's arm, the entire cathedral froze in stunned silence. Without a word, she turned on her heel, the white silk of her wedding gown swirling like a ghost in the candlelight, and bolted down the aisle toward the woman standing alone in the shadows at the back. Andrea's eyes widened not in surprise but in quiet triumph as Isabella crashed into her arms, their embrace sealing a fate that would shatter two empires overnight. Gasps rippled through the pews like a shockwave. Phones rose in unison, capturing the unthinkable. Isabella Hayes, the golden daughter of Senator Harlan Hayes, an heir apparent at Vanguard Capital, had just walked away from the most strategic marriage in New York finance. The groom, Derek Langford, son of Vanguard's largest investor, stood rigid at the altar, his face draining of color. Security surged forward, but Andrea's grip tightened around Isabella's waist, steadying her as the world they had both meticulously built began to burn. 2 years earlier, none of this had seemed possible. Vanguard Capital occupied the top 12 floors of a glass tower on Park Avenue, where ambition was currency and weakness was career suicide. Isabella had arrived as the youngest vice president in firm history, her Texas pedigree and Harvard MBA opening every door. Andrea Voss, hired 6 months later from Goldman Sachs, was the only analyst who dared challenge her in meetings. Their first clash happened in the 32nd floor war room during a $4 billion merger pitch. Isabella had laid out her strategy with flawless precision. Andrea dismantled it in 90 seconds flat, citing overlooked regulatory risks that would have cost the firm millions. The room went silent. The CEO, Richard Harlan, no relation but he might as well have been, actually smiled. "Voss, you just saved us a lawsuit." Hayes, listen to her next time. That night Isabella stayed late, replaying the presentation in her head. She hated losing. She hated it more when the person who beat her was brilliant, unflinching, and impossibly attractive. At 11:47 p.m. the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, and Andrea stepped out, suit jacket slung over one shoulder, dark hair loose for the first time. Their eyes met across the empty corridor. Neither spoke. The tension that had crackled in the boardroom shifted into something electric and dangerous. "You're still here," Andrea said, voice low. "So are you." A pause stretched between them, thick with possibility. Then Isabella did the only thing that felt honest. She closed the distance and kissed her. It was not gentle. It was the release of months of rivalry and unspoken hunger. When they broke apart, Andrea's fingers were tangled in Isabella's blonde hair, and both of them were breathing hard. "We can never do that again," Isabella whispered, already knowing she was lying. Andrea's smile was sharp. "Tell that to tomorrow's 8 a.m. strategy session." They tried. For 3 weeks they circled each other in meetings, professional masks firmly in place. But the nights belonged to them. Stolen hours in Andrea's Tribeca loft or Isabella's Upper East Side apartment with the blinds drawn and phones silenced. They spoke in half-sentences, understanding each other the way only two women who had fought their way to the top could. Andrea's father had been a union organizer in Queens. She had clawed through community college and night school MBAs. Isabella's world was country clubs and political fundraisers. Yet the pressure to be perfect was the same. Both knew the rules. Vanguard's unwritten policy against internal relationships, the board's obsession with family values optics, and Isabella's senator father who had already floated Derek Langford as the perfect match to stabilize her image ahead of the CEO vote. One Thursday after a brutal earnings call, Andrea cornered Isabella in the private elevator. "Your father called my boss today. Asked if I was distracting you." Isabella's stomach dropped. "What did you say?" "I told him the truth. That you're the most focused executive I've ever met." Andrea's hand brushed Isabella's wrist. "But we both know that's changing." The elevator dinged on the lobby. They stepped apart just as two analysts entered. The mask slid back on. Yet that night Isabella showed up at Andrea's door with a bottle of 2015 Screaming Eagle and a single question. "How long can we keep pretending this is just sex?" Andrea pulled her inside. "As long as it takes to get what we both want. The corner office. Then we decide what comes next." It sounded simple. It was anything but. Because at Vanguard, promotions were decided in blood. The board had narrowed the CEO race to 2 candidates, Isabella Hayes and Andrea Voss. the firm's future, and a 9-figure compensation package hung on whoever could prove they were ruthless enough to lead. Love, in that equation, was a liability. By the time the cathedral organ began its final chord, both women had already paid in ways the guests could never imagine. Isabella's fingers trembled against Andrea's back as the reality crashed over them. She had just torched her father's political alliances, Derek's family's investment, and her own shot at the CEO title. But for the first time in years, she felt something stronger than ambition: certainty. Security reached them seconds later, but Andrea had already steered Isabella through a side door into the cathedral's private courtyard. Rain began to fall, cold and sudden, soaking the white gown until it clung like a second skin. Andrea shrugged off her black blazer and draped it over Isabella's shoulders. "Breathe," she said. "We planned for this." They had. Not the running away, exactly, but the contingency. For 18 months their relationship had been a carefully managed risk. They kept separate apartments. They never traveled together. They used burner phones for anything personal. In public they were cordial rivals who occasionally grabbed coffee to discuss market trends. Behind closed doors they were each other's safe harbor. Until the board announced the CEO timeline, and the pressure became unbearable. 3 months earlier, at the firm's annual black tie gala, Isabella had watched Andrea accept the Analyst of the Year award from the same stage where she herself had been named VP of the Year the previous year. The applause was thunderous. Later, in the coat check room, Andrea had pressed a keycard into Isabella's palm. "Penthouse suite. 30 minutes. No one will know." They had barely made it inside before clothes were discarded and years of restraint snapped. Afterward, lying tangled in 1,000-thread-count sheets, Andrea traced the line of Isabella's jaw. "Your father called again. He wants you engaged by summer. Derek's family is ready to sign the merger papers once the ring is on your finger." Isabella closed her eyes. "I told him I needed time. Time is the one thing we don't have. The board meets in 90 days. Whoever they pick gets the title, the bonus, and the private jet. The other gets a polite exit package and a reputation for being unstable." Andrea's voice hardened. "I won't lose to you, Isabella. Not even for this." The words should have hurt. Instead they ignited something fierce and familiar. "Good," Isabella whispered. "Because I won't lose to you either." That became their new rule. Love did not cancel competition. They pushed each other harder in the office, leaking just enough information to the other's team to create plausible setbacks while protecting the core deals that mattered. Isabella killed a major acquisition Andrea had championed by quietly feeding regulatory concerns to the compliance officer. Andrea retaliated by planting doubts about Isabella's risk models during a closed-door partner meeting. Each victory tasted like ash because the loser came home to the winner that night, and they held each other until the guilt faded. Senator Hayes escalated the pressure in April. He flew to New York unannounced and took Isabella to lunch at the Four Seasons. "Derek has been patient," he said, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "The Langfords control 22% of Vanguard's voting shares. Marry the man, secure the seat, then do whatever you want on the side." Discreetly. Isabella stared at her father across the white tablecloth. "And if I say no? Then the board will hear about certain late-night meetings in your office. I have photos, Isabella. Do not test me." She told Andrea everything that same night, voice shaking. Andrea listened without interrupting, then poured 2 fingers of bourbon. "We fight dirty," she said. "You accept the engagement. Publicly. I'll make sure the board sees me as the safer, more stable choice. When the vote happens, you'll step aside gracefully. After the wedding we disappear. Europe, new identities, whatever it takes. But we do it together." It was a terrible plan. It was also the only one they had. So Isabella smiled for the cameras when the engagement was announced in May. She posed in Vera Wang while Derek slid a 10-carat diamond onto her finger. Andrea stood in the back of the press conference, expression unreadable. That night they met in a rented cabin in the Catskills, and made love like it might be the last time. Neither cried. Tears were for people who still believed in happy endings. The summer became a masterclass in deception. Isabella attended bridal fittings and political fundraisers on Derek's arm, while Andrea methodically dismantled her own reputation in the office. She missed deadlines, snapped at juniors, even accidentally forwarded a sensitive client memo to the wrong inbox. The board noticed. Whispers grew. Voss is cracking under pressure. Hayes, on the other hand, appeared the picture of poised ambition, engaged, focused, unstoppable. Only Isabella knew the truth. Every night Andrea came to her, exhausted but resolute. "One more month," she'd whisper against Isabella's collarbone. "Then we walk." But Senator Hayes was not finished. In July he leaked a story to the Wall Street Journal suggesting Andrea had used unorthodox methods to win key accounts, implying more than professional skill. The compliance department opened an investigation. Andrea was placed on administrative leave. The board moved the CEO vote up by 2 weeks. Isabella confronted her father in his Manhattan townhouse. "You're destroying her." "I'm protecting you," he replied, pouring scotch. "She was always a threat. Now she's neutralized. You'll thank me when you're CEO." That night Isabella drove to Andrea's loft expecting rage. Instead she found Andrea packing a single suitcase. "I'm done," Andrea said quietly. "The investigation will clear me eventually, but the damage is done. The board already voted. You won, Isabella. Congratulations." The words landed like a slap. Isabella grabbed her shoulders. "I didn't ask for this. I never wanted you out." Andrea's laugh was bitter. "Yet here we are. You get the title, the money, the perfect husband on paper, and I get to disappear." She stepped closer until their foreheads touched. "Unless you walk away right now. With me." Isabella's mind raced through every consequence. Lost inheritance, frozen trust funds, the senator's public disownment, the certain end of her career at Vanguard. She thought of the corner office she had killed herself to reach. Then she looked at Andrea, tired, fierce, hers, and made the first truly selfish decision of her adult life. "Pack another bag," she said. "We leave tonight." They didn't. Derek's family caught wind of the cold feet and accelerated the wedding to the following weekend. Security was doubled. Isabella's phone was monitored. The trap closed before they could run. The week before the ceremony was pure psychological warfare. Isabella moved through rehearsals like an actress reading lines she no longer believed. Andrea, officially barred from the firm, attended as a family friend, because Isabella had insisted. They stole moments in coat rooms and service hallways, trading desperate kisses and coded promises. On Thursday night, the rehearsal dinner at the plaza, Isabella watched Derek toast their future while Andrea sat 3 tables away, eyes locked on hers. Later, in the ladies' room, Andrea pressed a small flash drive into her palm. "Everything," she whispered. "Every email, every memo, every bribe your father arranged to push Derek's family into the firm. Release it after the wedding and the whole house of cards falls. We disappear in the chaos." Isabella stared at the drive. "This would destroy my father. He destroyed us first." Saturday morning dawned bright and merciless. Isabella stood in the bridal suite while stylists pinned her veil. Her mother fussed with the train, murmuring about legacy. Her father waited downstairs to walk her down the aisle. In the mirror Isabella barely recognized the woman staring back. Flawless makeup, hollow eyes. She slipped the flash drive into her bouquet, right next to the white roses. The cathedral was packed. Senators, CEOs, hedge fund titans. Derek waited at the altar, smiling the smile of a man who believed he had won. Andrea stood near the rear exit in a simple black dress, posture straight, face calm. Their eyes met across 200 guests. Isabella gave the tiniest nod. The organ began. The doors opened. Isabella took her father's arm and began the long walk. Each step felt like marching toward her own execution. Halfway down the aisle, the weight of every compromise, every betrayal, every night she had chosen ambition over truth pressed down until she couldn't breathe. Then she saw Andrea's face, steady, waiting, offering the only future worth having. The bouquet hit the marble floor with a soft thud. Isabella wrenched her arm free from her father's grip and ran. The train of her gown tore as she sprinted past shocked relatives. Derek called her name once, voice cracking. She didn't look back. Andrea met her halfway, arms open. The embrace was fierce, protective, The first honest thing Isabella had done in public in years. Cameras flashed. Guests rose. Senator Hayes roared something about disgrace. None of it mattered. Security tried to separate them. Andrea shoved one guard hard enough to send him stumbling. "Touch her again and I'll make sure every major outlet gets the files," she snarled. The threat worked. The men hesitated. In that pause, Isabella pulled the flash drive from the ruined bouquet and held it up like a weapon. "Everything ends today," she told her father across the chaos. "Unless you let us walk out of here." The senator's face turned purple, but he knew when he was beaten. He gave a curt nod. The guard stepped aside. Outside, rain had turned to a downpour. Andrea flagged a cab. They tumbled into the back seat, wet silk and all, laughing for the first time in months. The driver glanced in the rearview but said nothing. They went straight to Andrea's loft. Isabella peeled off the ruined gown and left it in a heap on the floor. For hours they simply held each other, no words needed. The city lights blurred through rain-streaked windows. Tomorrow the storm would hit. The press, the board, the lawsuits. Vanguard would fracture. Careers would end. Families would disown. But tonight there was only the two of them and the quiet knowledge that they had finally chosen each other. Dawn brought reality. By 7 a.m. the story was everywhere. Heiress ditches groom for mystery woman at altar. Stock in Vanguard dropped 14% before the market even opened. The board called an emergency meeting. Isabella's phone rang nonstop until she powered it off. At 10 a.m. Andrea opened her laptop and uploaded the files. By noon every major outlet had the story. Senator Hayes's backroom deals, Derek's family's coerced investment, the board's willingness to overlook ethics for profit. The SEC announced an investigation before lunch. Isabella watched the coverage from Andrea's couch, wrapped in an old Columbia sweatshirt that smelled like her. "We're both unemployable," she said quietly. Andrea kissed the top of her head. "We're free." By evening the consequences were clear. Isabella's trust fund was frozen. Her father released a statement calling her mentally unstable. Vanguard stock continued its slide. The firm would likely be broken up or sold. Derek's family withdrew every dollar. Andrea's name was cleared, but no one would hire the woman who had helped topple an empire. They spent the next week in the loft, ordering takeout and making plans. A small apartment in Portland. Consulting work under new names. Quiet lives. On the 7th night Isabella found Andrea on the fire escape staring at the skyline. "Regrets?" Isabella asked, sliding her arms around her waist. Andrea turned ice soft. "Only that it took me so long to realize the corner office was never the prize." "You were." They kissed under the city lights, slow and certain. Below them New York rushed on, indifferent. Empires rose and fell every day. Theirs had simply fallen faster. True or false? In the end, choosing love over power always leaves you with less than you started with.